The human ship arrived in the quiet space above the blue-green world with slow and careful movement. It did not rush or shine bright lights. It floated like it was taking a deep breath before stepping into someone else's home. Inside the ship, the human envoy stood near the viewing window and watched the planet below. Wide oceans reflected the distant star like soft silver, and long lines of green land curved across the surface. This world had survived a great conflict years ago, and now it was known across nearby systems as a place that chose peace instead of power. The human had been chosen for this mission not because he was the strongest or the most famous, but because he was known for listening. He had spent years working with different species, learning how to speak without words, and how to show respect without demanding it. His name did not matter here. What mattered was what he carried with him. The quiet hope that humans could be more than just visitors in the galaxy. They could be partners. When the ship landed, the ground team waited for him. The air outside felt warm and gentle, filled with a soft scent that reminded him of rain and growing plants. The alien city spread out before him, built in smooth curves instead of sharp edges. Tall structures rose like living trees, their surfaces glowing with faint natural light. Beings moved through wide pathways, some walking, some gliding, all watching the human with calm curiosity. He was guided toward a large open space where a gathering had already begun. The leaders of this world stood together, their forms tall and graceful, their eyes bright with quiet wisdom. They welcomed him with slow movements and soft sounds that were translated through a small device on his wrist. Their words spoke of gratitude, of shared survival, and of the future they hoped to build with the wider galaxy. The human answered with care. He spoke about Earth, about humanity's long history of mistakes and learning, about how humans had once looked at the sky with fear, but now looked at it with wonder. He did not promise perfection, he promised effort. The gathering continued with stories, shared food, and moments of simple connection. The human found himself sitting among alien families, watching their children play in gentle pools of light that formed on the ground like floating shapes. Laughter, even if it sounded different, felt the same. It filled the space with warmth. That was when he noticed her. She stood a short distance away from the main group, not alone, but quiet. Her posture was strong, but there was something heavy in the way she held herself, like she carried a memory that did not fade. Her skin shimmered in soft tones that changed with the light, and her eyes reflected the sky above. Around her neck, she wore a simple band made from a material that looked older than the city itself. One of the leaders noticed the human's gaze and gently guided him toward her. As they approached, the leader spoke in a calm voice, explaining that this woman had lost her partner during the Great Conflict. She had become a voice for rebuilding, for healing, and for keeping old traditions alive. The human greeted her with a small bow, a sign of respect he had learned from another world long ago. She returned the gesture, her eyes studying him with careful attention. They spoke through the translator, but soon found a rhythm that did not need many words. She told him about her world before the war, about fields that glowed at night and rivers that sang when the wind passed over them. He told her about Earth's forests, about storms that filled the sky with light, and about cities that never truly slept. There was no rush in their conversation. It flowed like a slow stream, steady and clear. As the stars above began to brighten, the gathering shifted into a more formal moment. The leaders formed a wide circle, and the air seemed to grow still, as if the world itself was listening. The human was guided to stand near the center. He did not know what to expect, but he trusted the calm in their movements. The widowed alien woman stepped forward. Her voice, when translated, carried both softness and strength. She spoke about the loss her people had faced, about how war had taken not only lives, but also the simple dreams of many families. She spoke about how her culture believed that healing came not only from time, but from brave choices. Then she turned to the human. Her question was gentle, but it landed with great weight. She asked if he would consider joining his life with hers, not as a command or a demand, but as a symbol of two worlds choosing to walk forward together, even when the path was uncertain. The circle of leaders did not react with shock or anger. They waited. The crowd around them grew silent. Even the distant sounds of the city seemed to fade. The human felt his heart beat louder in his chest. This was not part of any mission plan. There were no instructions for a moment like this. He looked at her face and saw not a political move, but a person who had known loss and still believed in hope. He took a slow breath. He thought about Earth, about the people who had once feared the unknown and then learned to reach for it. He thought about the children he had seen playing in the light, about the leaders who had welcomed him without walls or weapons between them. He answered honestly. He said that he could not promise to understand everything about her world or her pain. He said he could not promise that the future would always be easy, but he could promise to walk beside her with respect, to listen, and to learn. He said yes, not as a hero or a symbol, but as a human choosing connection. A soft sound moved through the gathering, like a shared breath being released. The leaders nodded slowly. The alien woman's eyes shimmered brighter, and she placed her hand near her chest, a sign of deep thanks in her culture. The moment did not turn into celebration right away. Instead, it became something quieter and more powerful. People began to speak in low voices, sharing thoughts and feelings. Some were surprised, some unsure, but many were thoughtful. Later, as the night settled over the city, the human and the alien woman walked along a wide path that curved around a pool of glowing water. The light from the surface reflected on their faces, creating soft patterns that moved with every step. She told him about her partner, about the kindness that had filled their home and the silence that had followed their loss. The human listened, not trying to fix or change the past, but simply being there. He shared stories of Earth, of people who had crossed oceans and skies to find new beginnings, often carrying both fear and hope in equal parts. They stopped near the edge of the water and looked up at the stars. From this world, the sky looked different, filled with shapes and colors the human had never seen before. Yet the feeling was the same: wonder, smallness, da, possibility. The alien woman spoke again, softly. She said that her world believed the stars watched over those who dared to change their path. The human smiled and said that on Earth many people believed the same thing, even if they used different words. As they walked back toward the city, the human felt the weight of what he had agreed to, but he also felt something else, a quiet sense of purpose. This was more than a personal choice. It was a step into a future where humans were not just visitors in the galaxy, but part of its story. In the distance, the city lights glowed brighter, like a field of gentle stars on the ground. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with questions and challenges that neither of them could yet see, but they walked toward it together, side by side, under a sky that held more than one world's dreams. The night air carried the soft sounds of life continuing, and for the first time since he had arrived, the human felt that this place was not just another destination. It was the beginning of something that could reach far beyond this planet, touching worlds that had not yet even looked up and wondered who else might be out there. Morning came to the alien world in a slow and gentle way. The sky did not suddenly turn bright like on Earth. Instead, soft bands of light spread across the clouds, changing from deep blue to pale gold. The city woke with quiet sounds. Doors opened like petals, pathways filled with slow movement. The air carried the smell of fresh water and growing plants. The human stood near the edge of the guest shelter, watching the world come alive. He had slept little. His mind kept returning to the moment from the night before, to the question that had changed the shape of his mission. The word yes still felt new and heavy, like something he had just placed into the universe and now had to learn how to carry. The widowed alien woman approached from the curved path that led between the tall, glowing structures. She walked with steady steps, her posture calm but strong. The light of the rising sky reflected off her skin in soft colors, like gentle waves moving across a quiet lake. They greeted each other with the same small bow they had shared before. There was no rush to speak. They stood for a moment, listening to the world around them. Somewhere nearby, young voices rose in playful sounds. The wind moved through tall plants that lined the paths, making a soft, steady hum. She invited him to walk with her. They followed a wide road that curved out of the city and into open land. The buildings slowly gave way to fields of tall, glowing grass and long streams of clear water that reflected the sky. The human noticed how the land seemed shaped by care instead of force. There were no hard lines, no sharp walls. Everything flowed. She told him this area had once been damaged during the conflict. The ground had been dry and broken, the water dark and still. Her people had worked for many seasons to bring life back. They had planted, cleaned, and waited. Slowly, the land had answered. The human listened closely. On Earth, he knew stories like this well. Places hurt by storms, by fire, by war, and then slowly healed by hands that refused to give up. They stopped near a wide pool of water. The surface glowed with soft light from tiny living shapes that floated just below. The alien woman knelt and touched the water with her hand. Small ripples spread out in perfect circles. She spoke about her home, the one she had shared with her partner. It had been near a place like this, surrounded by water and tall plants. When she described evenings filled with quiet talks and shared meals, and mornings filled with plans for the future. When she spoke, her voice did not break, but there was a depth in her words that showed how much those memories still lived inside her. The human did not interrupt. He knew some stories did not need answers, only space. He shared his own memories. He spoke of a small town near a wide river on Earth, where he had grown up. He talked about long walks with his family, about simple meals, about dreams of the stars that had once felt very far away. He admitted that even now, standing on another world, he sometimes missed the sound of rain hitting his window back home. They both smiled at that. As they walked back toward the city, they noticed small groups of people watching them. Some faces showed curiosity, others quiet concern. The bond between them had already begun to ripple through the community, just like the circles in the glowing pool. Later that day, the human was invited to a council gathering. The leaders sat in a wide circle, their expressions calm but serious. They spoke about the meaning of the choice made the night before. Some saw it as a strong sign of unity. Others worried about the challenges it might bring. Different worlds had different laws, different customs, and different ways of seeing life. The human stood when it was his turn to speak. He did not use big words or grand promises. He said that he did not come to change their world or ask them to change his. He came to learn, to share, and to walk forward with respect. He said that connection always carried risk, but it also carried the chance for something better than fear. The room stayed quiet for a long moment after he finished. Then one of the older leaders nodded slowly. She said that long ago their people had faced a choice between building walls or building bridges. They had chosen bridges, and even though the path had been hard, they did not regret it. The meeting ended with no final decision, but with open minds. In the days that followed, the human began to take part in daily life. He helped with simple work, like guiding water through small channels and planting young glowing plants along the paths. He learned how to use tools that felt strange in his hands but slowly became familiar. The alien woman worked beside him, showing him the right way to move, the right time to wait. There were moments of quiet laughter when he made small mistakes, and moments of shared pride when something finally worked. Children often gathered nearby, watching the human with wide eyes. Some were brave enough to come closer and touch the fabric of his clothing, curious about its texture and warmth. He let them, smiling, and sometimes showed them small things from Earth, like a simple picture device that held images of forests, oceans, and skies from his home world. Their eyes would grow even wider. Not everything was easy. There were moments of misunderstanding. Once, the human used a hand signal that meant something friendly on Earth, but on this world, it carried a different meaning. The alien woman gently corrected him before it caused trouble. Another time, she followed a custom that confused him, and he had to ask for its meaning. Each small mistake became a lesson, not a problem. One evening, they sat together near a high place that looked out over the city. The lights below glowed like a sea of stars on the ground. The sky above was deep and full of color, filled with distant suns and moving shapes that drifted slowly across the dark. The alien woman spoke about her people's fears. Some worried that bringing humans closer would invite old conflicts back into their lives. Others feared losing their traditions in a wider galaxy. The human understood. On Earth, many had felt the same way when new cultures and ideas arrived. He said that fear often came from not knowing what would happen next, but that closing doors did not stop change. It only stopped understanding. They sat in silence for a while, watching the sky. A message arrived from the human ship. There were questions from his own leaders. They wanted reports, plans, clear steps forward. The human felt the pull of two worlds now, both looking to him for answers. He told the alien woman about this. She listened carefully. She said that her people believed that when someone stood between two paths, they did not have to choose one and leave the other. They could become the bridge. The words stayed with him. The next day, a small challenge arose in the city. A water system in one of the outer areas stopped working, and the plants there began to fade. The alien people gathered unsure of the cause. The human offered to help, using tools and methods from his own world. Working together, they discovered a small blockage deep within the channels. It took patience, steady hands, and shared effort to clear it. When the water finally flowed again, the plants slowly lifted, glowing brighter. The people watching let out a soft, shared sound of relief. It was a small moment, but it spread through the city. Stories were told about how human and alien hands had worked side by side to bring life back to the land. The bond between the two grew stronger, not because of big speeches, but because of simple action. That night, the human and the alien woman walked through the city paths again. This time, more people greeted them, not just with curiosity, but with quiet respect. They stopped near a wide-open space where families gathered under the stars. The alien woman pointed to a group of young ones sitting close to their elders, listening to stories about the past. She said that her people believed the future was shaped by the stories the young chose to carry forward. The human thought about what story might be told about this time. about a moment when two worlds took a step toward each other instead of away. As the night deepened, they stood together and looked out at the sky. The human felt the weight of responsibility, but also a growing sense of calm. He was no longer just an envoy or a visitor. He was becoming part of something larger. The path ahead was still uncertain. There would be more questions, more doubts, and more tests. But as they stood there, under a sky filled with distant light, it felt possible. Two worlds, walking closer, one step at a time. The sky changed color without warning. One moment, it was calm and deep, filled with soft stars and slow-moving clouds of light. The next, a sharp line of bright glow cut across the upper air like a silent signal written in fire. People in the city stopped and looked up. The wind shifted, carrying a strange, cold feeling that did not belong to this warm world. The human felt it first in his chest, a quiet pressure that told him something was wrong. The alien woman stood beside him, her eyes reflecting the sudden glow. She did not speak, but her posture became alert, like someone who had learned long ago to listen to the world when it whispered danger. Small lights began to move across the city, not panic, but caution. The leaders sent out gentle calls, asking people to stay close to their homes and gather in safe areas. The human's wrist device lit up with messages from his ship. Sensors had detected a shift in the planet's upper air layers. Something large was moving through the system. The human and the alien woman followed a path toward one of the higher platforms that looked out over the horizon. From there they could see the curve of the world and the wide sky above it. The glow in the air grew brighter, forming a soft arc that slowly spread. It was not an enemy ship. There were no sharp lines or engines burning. Instead, it looked like a great cloud of light and shadow, moving as one. The human's device translated data into simple words. A massive space storm, a wave of energy and particles drawn toward the planet's magnetic field. The alien woman spoke quietly. Her people had stories about such storms. They came once in many generations. Sometimes they passed without harm. Sometimes they changed the land. The leaders gathered on the platform, their faces calm but serious. They spoke about old records and ancient memories. In the past, storms like this had caused rivers to rise, skies to darken, and ground systems to fail. Their world had rebuilt once before, but the work had taken many seasons. The human stepped forward. He asked about their current systems, their shields, their power networks. The leaders explained that they had grown strong, but not for something this large. Their defenses were made for small threats, not for a force that moved with the weight of a star. The human felt a familiar pull inside him. On Earth, he had seen storms, fires, and floods. He had seen people stand and say, "We will not let this break us." He contacted his ship and asked for full support. The crew responded at once, sending plans, tools, and energy units down to the surface. They could not stop the storm, but they could help the world stand through it. The alien woman stayed close as the human began to work with the leaders. Together, they set up safe zones in low areas, reinforced water channels, and prepared shelters near the strongest structures. The human shared simple methods for protecting power lines and storing energy in case of system failure. People moved through the city with purpose. There was fear, but there was also focus. Elders guided the young. Workers carried supplies. The air filled with the sound of steps and quiet voices. As the storm drew closer, the sky darkened. The stars faded behind a moving wall of shadow and light. The wind grew stronger, bending the tall, glowing plants and sending waves across the wide pools of water. The first wave of energy hit like a deep breath from the universe. The ground did not shake, but the air hummed. Lights across the city flickered, then steadied. The human stood on a high platform, watching the systems he had helped set up. The alien woman stood beside him, her hand resting lightly against a support beam. Her eyes moved across the city, checking, counting, hoping. Another wave came, stronger this time. A distant sound rolled across the land, not loud, but deep, like the echo of something very far away. One of the outer water channels overflowed, sending glowing streams across the ground. The human ran with a group of workers to guide the flow away from homes. They worked quickly, using barriers and channels to redirect the water back into safe paths. The alien woman joined them, moving with speed and confidence, her knowledge of the land guiding their steps. At one point, a structure near the edge of the city began to tilt. As the ground beneath it softened, people inside called out. The human did not hesitate. He and several others rushed forward, placing support beams and tying lines to steady the walls. The alien woman climbed with them, securing the top edge with practiced movements. For a moment, the wind pushed hard, and the structure groaned. The human felt the strain in his arms, in his shoulders, in every part of him. He thought about Earth, about standing in storms and holding on to things that mattered. Then the pressure eased. The building settled, still standing. People inside stepped out, safe. A quiet sound of relief spread through the group. The storm lasted for many hours. Waves of light and shadow passed overhead, sometimes gentle, sometimes strong. Systems failed and were repaired. Channels overflowed and were guided back. People moved, helped, rested, and moved again. The human lost track of time. He only knew the rhythm of work and breath. The alien woman stayed near him, sometimes working beside him, sometimes moving ahead to check on others. At one point, as they stood on a high ridge looking out over the city, she spoke softly. She said that long ago, during the war, she had felt the world falling apart around her. She had felt small and powerless. Now, she said, she felt something different. She felt like she was standing inside the future, helping shape it. The human understood. He felt the same. Finally, the sky began to clear. The wall of shadow moved on, the light softened, and the stars slowly returned, one by one. The wind settled into a gentle flow. The city, though tired and marked by the storm, still stood. People gathered in open spaces, checking on each other, sharing water and simple food. There were marks of damage, but there was also laughter, relief, and quiet pride. The leaders called for a meeting as soon as it was safe. They stood before the people and spoke about what had happened. They thanked everyone for their strength and calm. Then they turned to the human. They spoke about how his people's help, his knowledge, and his willingness to stand in the middle of danger had made a real difference. They said that this was what a bridge between worlds looked like, not words, but action. The human felt a warmth spread through him that had nothing to do with the air or the lights. He looked at the alien woman and saw the same feeling in her eyes. Later, as the night deepened and the city rested, they walked along a path near the water. The pools glowed softly again, reflecting the returning stars. They spoke about what the storm had shown them. That no world stood alone. That even the strongest systems could fail without people willing to help each other. That connection was not just about peace in quiet times, but about standing together when the sky itself seemed to turn. The alien woman stopped and looked at the human. She said that her people would remember this night for many generations, not just as a time of danger, but as a time when two worlds truly became one community. The human smiled, tired but steady. He said that on Earth, people often said that storms showed who you really were. He was glad to see what this world had shown. They stood there for a while, listening to the gentle sounds of the city settling into rest. The path ahead was still long. There would be more challenges, more questions from both worlds, and more moments that would test their bond. But now, they knew something important. They could face the sky together, no matter what it chose to send. The morning after the storm felt different from any other morning the human had seen on this world. The air was clean and bright, like it had been washed by the sky itself. The plants along the paths glowed with fresh color, and small streams of water still moved gently across the ground, finding their way back into the wide pools and channels. The city did not rush back into its normal rhythm. Instead, people moved slowly, checking on homes, helping neighbors, and sharing quiet words of comfort. The sound of simple tools and soft voices filled the air. It was not the noise of rebuilding after loss, but the steady sound of care. The human walked through the city with the alien woman at his side. Everywhere they went, people paused to greet them. Some offered small gestures of thanks. Others simply nodded, their eyes warm and thoughtful. The human felt the weight of those looks, not as pressure, but as trust. They reached a wide open space near the center of the city where the leaders often gathered. Today, a larger circle had formed. Not just leaders, but families, workers, elders, and young ones stood together. The space felt full, not just of bodies, but of shared memory. One of the older leaders stepped forward. Her voice, when translated, carried a deep calm. She spoke about the storm and what it had tested. She said it had tested their systems, their planning, and their courage. But most of all, it had tested their willingness to stand together. She turned toward the human and the alien woman. She said that their bond, which had once been a question, had become an answer. Not a perfect answer, and not a simple one, but a real one. The human listened, his hands resting at his sides. He felt the presence of his ship above, of Earth far away, and of this world right here beneath his feet. All of it felt closer now, connected in a way he had not expected when he first looked down at this planet from space. The leader invited the alien woman to speak. She stepped forward, her posture steady. She spoke about loss, about how the war and the storm had both taken things from her people. But she also spoke about what remained. She spoke about the hands that reached out in the dark, the voices that called out to guide others to safety, and the quiet strength that rose when fear tried to take hold. She said that her culture believed the future was built not by those who never fell, but by those who chose to stand up together after falling. Then she looked at the human. She said that when she had asked her question, she had not known what the answer would bring. She had only known that her world needed a sign that the path forward did not have to be walked alone. Now, she said, she had seen that sign in action. A soft sound moved through the crowd, like a shared breath. The human was asked to speak. He stepped forward slowly. He did not raise his voice. He did not try to sound strong or important. He spoke the way he had learned to speak on many worlds, with honesty and care. He said that humans were not perfect. They made mistakes. They argued. They sometimes chose the wrong path before finding the right one. But he said that humans had one thing they kept choosing again and again, even when it was hard. They chose to reach out. He said that this world had reached back. He spoke about how standing in the storm had shown him something simple and powerful, that courage did not belong to one species, one world, or one history. It belonged to anyone who chose to care when caring felt risky. When he finished, the space stayed quiet for a moment. Then the crowd began to make a gentle sound of agreement and support. It was not loud, but it filled the air like a steady wave. Later that day, a message came from the human ship. His leaders wanted to know what came next. They asked about agreements, plans, and long-term steps. The human sat with the alien woman near the edge of the glowing water pools and read the message. He felt the familiar pull again, the feeling of standing between two paths. He shared the message with her. She listened and then spoke softly. She said that her people would welcome more humans, not as visitors, but as partners. She said they were ready to open learning spaces, shared projects, and places where both cultures could meet and grow together. The human felt something settle inside him. The path forward was becoming clearer, not because it was simple, but because it was shared. He sent a reply to his leaders. He did not promise fast results or easy success. He promised a real connection, built on work, trust, and time. As the day moved on, preparations began for a joining ceremony. It was not a grand event with shining displays or loud celebration. It was simple, shaped by both cultures. A space was prepared near a wide field of glowing plants, under a sky that opened wide to the stars. The human and the alien woman both took time to prepare in their own ways. The human put on simple clothing that carried symbols of Earth, small marks that represented oceans, land, and sky. The alien woman wore a band of light fabric that shifted gently with her movements, reflecting the colors of her world. When the time came, people gathered in a wide circle. The stars above were bright and clear, and a soft breeze moved through the plants, creating a quiet, living sound. The leaders from both worlds stood together at the center. Words were spoken about respect, choice, and shared future. There were no promises of forever or perfect peace. There were promises of listening, learning, and walking forward side by side. The human and the alien woman stepped into the center of the circle. They did not touch at first. They looked at each other, really looked, seeing not a symbol or a bridge, but a person, someone who had chosen to stand in the storm, to face fear, and to believe in something larger than themselves. When they placed their hands together, it was a simple movement, but the meaning behind it felt wide and deep, like the sky above them. The crowd did not cheer, they did not shout. They made a soft sound of support that rolled gently through the circle, steady and warm. After the ceremony, people stayed. They shared food, stories, and quiet laughter. Children ran between groups, carrying small lights that glowed in their hands like tiny stars. The human stood at the edge of the gathering for a moment, watching. He thought about how far he had come, not just in distance, but in understanding. He thought about Earth, about the long road that had led humans to look up and wonder who else might be out there. The alien woman joined him. She followed his gaze toward the sky. She said that her people believed the stars were not just places, but questions. Questions about who you were and who you could become. The human smiled and said that on Earth, many people felt the same way, even if they used different words. They walked together to a quiet spot where the city lights met the dark of open land. From there, they could see both the glowing structures behind them and the wide, open world ahead. A new message arrived from the human's ship. It was short and simple. More ships would come, not for control, but for learning. Engineers, teachers, and explorers were being prepared. The path of connection was opening. The human shared this with the alien woman. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them, her expression calm and hopeful. She said that her world was ready to welcome them. As the night deepened, the gathering slowly came to an end. People returned to their homes, carrying the warmth of the day with them. The city settled into a peaceful rhythm, lights dimming, voices softening. The human and the alien woman stood together under the stars one last time before resting. The sky felt wide and full, not empty. The future ahead was still unknown. There would be challenges, misunderstandings, and moments when fear tried to return. But there would also be hands reaching out, voices calling across the dark, and paths being built where none had existed before. They did not speak much as they looked up. They did not need to. Two worlds had chosen to walk forward together, and in the quiet space between the stars, that choice began to echo far beyond this single night, touching places and people who had not yet even looked up to wonder who else might be out there.